September 26th, 2017. Well, just kind of wanted to go over a few things in the farm here. Number one, these sunflowers are beautiful, and at night the moths come into them and work them. So in the daytime you have the bees and the honeybees and the mason bees and the bumblebees and every other kind of crazy cool pollinator. And then at night the moths come in, and I think they're actually after nectar, but they're pretty cool to watch, and see them quite often amongst the flowers at night. I basically wanted to talk a little bit tonight about preserving biology, and I know I talk a lot about preserving biology in the soil, and that's critical for really good growth, but I also want to talk about how healthy and nutritional farm practices that don't use pesticides foster, well, homes and communities. So tonight, as I was going through and checking out the crimson beefsteak tomatoes, looking to see what needs to be harvested next, which obviously there's a lot, you'll see as we go down the row here, I re-noticed, wow, and now I just found another, oh, that's a spider, okay. I re-noticed from the other night when my friend Steve and I were down here, we noticed all these little spider webs, tiny little spider webs. That is not one of those spiders, he's a different spider. But interesting to find another species in here. But the ones I'm talking about are these right here. I don't know how well you can see that on the camera. There we go. And there you go. Got an angle so you can see the spider in the middle of the web, and the web itself. So these guys are all over the place. Whoop, sorry. Trying to get that zoom right and still get focus. These guys are all over the place in here. So many of these webs, and they're such beautiful webs. And we actually found one the other night that was must have been fairly new, because it was perfect. I mean, perfect. None of these little repairs or kinks. It was just this perfect round web with grids all through it. And I want to point out that these guys are all over the place in here. I don't know if you can see him. If I can find him on the camera. Yeah, all over. There's another web there. There's another one right there. Yeah, look at him run off. I'm freaking him out. Moving the trellis. So, anyway, so what happens when you don't spray pesticides and fungicides is you get all those kind of guys in here. And so what do you think they're doing? I'll bet that they're sitting in here and nailing all the fruit flies. I'm sure they're nailing flies, because we saw them get a small moth the other night. That was pretty cool to watch. And but my guess is that whatever flies are being attracted to the plants as cover or as food. I think more as cover, because I haven't seen any insect damage on any of these fruit. And oh, I spoke too soon. Yeah, looks like we got a fruit fly there. So there you go. So I'll have to watch when I harvest for that one. That's the only one I found with that. But anyway, so in not spraying pesticides and trying to mitigate the problem, we now have all kinds of communities that are going to mitigate the problem for us. And that's an awesome thing. And I think you can probably get an idea now, as I go down this row, 2 more webs there, how many of these webs are here. There's another one there. So they're all over the place. And we also found a cricket up on here the other night. And then down by the pond we found a glowworm, which is like basically the larval stage of a firefly. And if you haven't read up on fireflies, I'll share the link down below. Really interesting read about the reproductive stage of the firefly. I also wanted to point out the massive fruit load here. I know these plants don't look like they're in that great a shape, But as I pointed out in previous videos, when you have potassium deficiency, the potassium is pulled from those leaves die, they won't come back to life, they're gone. But that said, if you look at the tops of these plants, you can see they have that healthy blue-green color to them. They have a sheen on the leaves, they're producing some type of defensive oil, and the stems and leaves are very furry, and there are new flowers setting. So these plants clearly have more energy again since I started the foliar feed back up, and they're responding really well. And I also want to point out that with the dry, hot weather we've had, it's been in the 80s here for the past at least 10 days. We haven't had any cracking on the fruit, so that's very nice. And there's lots and lots of them coming on, and more of them coming on, and more of them sizing up, and more flowers setting. So, yeah, they're doing well. I guess I should give you a shot of the cherry tomatoes while I'm here. I'm sorry if this video gets a little long, but just kind of want to share some stuff, and I apologize for filming in the dark, but daylight is getting a lot shorter, and I just am not getting the time in the daytime to do a lot of filming. So I end up having to do it at night. Yeah. So anyway, there's another spider web. Anyway, I just wanted to point out how not using pesticides, fungicides, herbicides helps protect the biology that's supposed to be here, and those guys like the spiders and the other insects that are predatory come in and they'll hunt and eat the other insects. And if your plants are truly healthy, they shouldn't be drawing insects too much, because they produce more polyphenol compounds, and that's a whole long explanation. But just kind of wanted to point out that things can be recovered after a potassium deficiency, and I have not put any Bravo or any of those fungicides on. I've done this all with foliar feeds and drenches, using complete trace mineral and hormonal nutrition, and specialty amount of potassium as a booster to help cover these crops, which are filling a tremendous fruit load. And so obviously they need lots of potassium, because when potassium is transported into the fruit, it's locked in the fruit, because potassium is what carries nutrients and sugars and all that kind of stuff in the plant. Basically, it's kind of the carrier element. So when it gets pushed into a fruit, it stays in the fruit, so that potassium is locked up and can no longer function in the plant. So I hope this has been informative and helpful, and I thank you again for watching the Farmacy Seeds Network.